ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय. So this is the summarized rendering of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the first canto, and I have a blog summarizing these cantos, and we are currently in the second chapter of the blog, which I have titled as Shri Krishna's Mercy. So in the previous chapter, or the previous summarization, we saw how and why Vyasadeva composed the Bhagavatam, and also to whom he imparted all the knowledge that he had composed and compiled. This chapter is titled Shri Krishna's Mercy because in various different activities, Krishna saved the lives of the Pandavas and all his devotees, and that is what this chapter is about. In the previous chapter, it was just about how the Bhagavatam was composed. So, when the sages at the Naimisha forest asked Suta Ugrashrava to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam and to tell the stories of Shri Krishna, he began the story from the end of the Mahabharata war. So, at the end of Mahabharata war, Ashwatthama, the son of Dronacharya, burnt with the fire of revenge, and because his father had been killed when he was sitting down meditating on the battlefield, and Ashwatthama felt that he had been cheated, that his father had been cheated, and he also saw others being betrayed. Bhishma fell by deceit. Duryodhana was defeated by deceit, and all the great warriors on both sides fell, and many of the big warriors fell due to deceit, which Krishna actively conducted. And that's why Ashwatthama was burning with rage, and he wanted to destroy the Pandavas. So he made a daring attack on the Pandavas' tents at night and killed 5 people in their sleep, and also killed the leader of the Pandava armies, Drishtadyumna. And he thought the 5 people he killed were actually the Pandavas. But then later he realized that the Pandavas were actually alive. The 5 he had killed were their sons, were actually the 5 sons of Draupadi. And then so his revenge had not been complete, so he tried to destroy the Pandavas. So he sent the Brahmastra, which is a dreaded weapon, by invoking a mantra stating that with this weapon he would vanquish every member of the Pandava family. And when this weapon rushed towards the Pandavas, Krishna realized the danger that his great devotees, the Pandavas, were in. And on his order, Arjuna was able to deflect the Brahmastra weapon and protect his brothers. However, the weapon went and attacked the pregnant Uttara. So all the sons of Pandavas had expired, and only the fetus growing up in Uttara's body, fetus which was 7 months old, was the only potential king of the Pandava lineage, and the weapon went and attacked that fetus. At that time, Uttara, with unbearable pain, ran to Krishna and asked his protection, asked him to protect her. She said that even if this weapon burns me to ashes, I am fine with it, but please protect my baby. And Krishna was overwhelmed by her devotion, and because Krishna exists in every particle of this universe, he entered Uttara's body through her breath and entered the womb, and he encircled the 7-month-old fetus. It's been described in great detail in the 12th chapter, when Parikshit, as a 7-month-old fetus, was developing in the body. His eyes had formed, and he could see this small thumb-like figure, dark in color, wearing yellow robes, wearing a brilliant golden helmet, having 4 arms, and carrying the chakra on one of his hands, encircling him in all 3 dimensions, going round and round. He negated the effect of that atomic weapon, the Brahmastra. What is stated in the Bhagavatam is that Krishna was able to dissipate the energy of that weapon as the sun as the sun evaporates the dew from the land. As the land dries, as the water gets evaporated by the sun, in that way Krishna encircled Parikshit, and he was able to save Parikshit's life. The baby Parikshit saw Krishna going around in circles around him, and he wondered who this being is. And all his life, later on, Parikshit searched for that being, and finally that being was revealed to him by others at the end of his life. So that was Krishna's mercy. For the sake of his devotee, he saved them from the most dreadful of weapons. That is Krishna's mercy. When Krishna thus saved the baby and saved Uttara's life, Kunti was overwhelmed and tears filled her eyes. She came to Krishna and offered prayers. Krishna was Kunti's nephew, but Kunti also knew that Krishna is not a normal person. He is the supreme person. He is the only one, the controller of the entire universe. And she said, "O Lord, despite being my nephew in your present form, you are the ultimate truth, the supreme soul. You saved us from calamity after calamity. You act as a friend, guide, and a servant of our family. I pray that you always create adverse situations for us so that we can remember you continuously." So this prayer might sound strange. So Krishna is saying, please create adverse situations for us. Put us from calamity to calamity. Let calamities befall us so that we can remember you continuously. The reason Kunti is stating this is that one only remembers God when he has lot of reversals in life. If he is happy, if he is contented, the likelihood of him remembering God is less, and the likelihood of him forgetting him is more. And Kunti knew that Krishna has to be remembered at each and every moment of life. No time has to be wasted so the time during which Krishna is not remembered is wasted time. And Kunti did not want that to happen, and that's why she prayed that let adverse situations occur, and thus that way we will remember you continuously. And during the course of this prayer, Kunti said the very famous verses: Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. O Krishna, you are the supreme soul Vasudeva, who is the son of Devaki. You are also the loving son of Nandagopa. O Govinda, I bow down to you. Krishna suggested that Ashwatthama be punished, and he was dragged as an animal by Bhima to Draupadi. But Draupadi, being a very good natured lady, she was pained to see her guru's son being dragged to her like an animal, because Dronacharya was the guru of the Pandavas. He had taught all of them the art of martial warfare. And so Draupadi immediately asked Bhima to release Ashwatthama. But because Ashwatthama had sinned by killing the sons of Draupadi in the dead of night, in an act not befitting a warrior, the Pandavas came to the consensus, and Yudhishthira ordered that his hair be removed with just 5 pieces left, 5 tufts of hair left on his head, which acts as an insult, which is for a warrior is equivalent to death, but at the same time not killing him. So Yudhishthira suggested that punishment as justful, and that was done. And then Krishna removed the jewel that was present on Ashwatthama's head right from birth, and that jewel which saved him from all diseases actually was made worthless. So Krishna removed that jewel and let Ashwatthama go. So even though they did not kill Ashwatthama, he was punished justfully for his cowardly acts. After that, Krishna helped install Yudhishthira as king at Hastinapura to start a new age of peace and justice, because Yudhishthira was a very justful person. And when that was done, Krishna also helped the Pandavas mourn for the dead in the war, and also helped them conduct Ashwamedha sacrifices. But before that, he remembered that there is one waiting for him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, waiting to reach the Supreme Lord, waiting for his grace. And Krishna reminded Yudhishthira that it is time to go and visit Bhishma. So when the Pandavas along with Krishna walked to the battlefield of Kurukshetra, to the place where Bhishma had fallen, they saw Bhishma, and it is described in the Bhagavatam like a god fallen down on the earth, lying in a bed of arrows pierced through him. And Yudhishthira, seeing that was overcome by tears. He just couldn't stop himself. He knew that so many had died in the war so that he became king, and he always had that feel of guiltiness that so many had died on his behalf on both sides in a war that could have been avoided if Duryodhana had relented earlier. So Krishna wanted Yudhishthira to actually get advice from Bhishma, and that's why he took him. First, Bhishma actually paid obeisances to Krishna mentally, and then he smiled at all his kids who had surrounded him. And to Yudhishthira particularly, he said, "Do not cry, O Pandava, because the people who had destined to die had died. So it was not that this thing was some crime committed by Yudhishthira, but it was bound to happen, and that's why they all had died." And so he asked Yudhishthira to not wail for the dead. So then Krishna asked Bhishma to advise Yudhishthira in all duties, like the duties of man, the duties of king, what is dharma, and so on. So on all topics. Bhishma smiled at Krishna because he knew who Krishna was. He knew that Krishna was the supreme soul, and he said mentally, "Lord, it is your grace that even though you know everything, you are asking me to relate these matters to Yudhishthira." Then Bhishma advised Yudhishthira, "Son, do not grieve on those whose lives have been lost. They were already destined to fall for the good of the world. Know that your cousin Krishna is the supreme soul. The vision I had of him during the war as the charioteer of Arjuna was such a beautiful sight, only visible to the Kaurava army." So Krishna was the charioteer of Arjuna, and so when all those warriors who were confronted by Arjuna saw Krishna first, and then they saw Arjuna, they saw the beautiful form of Krishna wearing the yellow garments, his sky bluish colored body, and his lotus face, smiling lotus face. And Bhishma said, "The vision I had of him during the war was such a beautiful sight, which was only visible to the Kaurava army, because Arjuna was confronting the Kaurava army, only they could see him face to face. The Pandavas only saw the backs of the chariot. To help me keep my word that I will break Krishna's promise of not bearing a weapon in the war, he rushed towards me with a chariot wheel when Arjuna did not have the heart to give a proper fight to me. How can I express his mercy? I will ever remember his divine beautiful form as Arjuna's charioteer." Bhishma wanted to make Krishna break his promise. Krishna had promised that he will not take up a weapon in the war. And to make him break that promise, one particular day on the battle, he fought so ferociously and defeated and killed several thousands of the Pandava armed forces. And Arjuna, because of his reverence for Bhishma, half-heartedly fought against him and could not really abate the harm that Bhishma was causing the Pandava armies. And noticing Arjuna's weakness, Krishna got down from the chariot, took up a chariot wheel lying down there, and rushed towards Bhishma with the intention of killing him. As soon as Bhishma saw Krishna rush towards him with a chariot wheel, he dropped his bow and accepted Krishna. He wanted to die at the hands of Krishna because he knew that if for one who dies at the hands of Krishna, liberation is guaranteed. And so he accepted Krishna. Bhishma was a great devotee of Krishna. So he always remembered Krishna as the charioteer of Arjuna. After this, after telling Yudhishthira who Krishna really was, he then explained the duties of men, of society, of kings, and then also said that all of these should function with the central element being devotion to God, which is the easiest way to salvation. Bhishma actually was waiting for the time of when the sun begins its sojourn towards the north, which is called Uttarayana, because Bhishma had this boon that he could die only on his will. So despite being pierced by arrows throughout, he did not die. He waited for that opportune moment, because for one who dies when the sun moves north, he directly attains the Lord's feet. So Bhishma was waiting for that opportunity. And on that particular day, Krishna and the Pandavas returned back to pay their respects to Bhishma. In their presence, Bhishma looked at Krishna with love-filled eyes, meditated on him, closed his eyes, and concentrated his life force toward the temple on his head and escaped out of the body. So escaping out of the body, the soul escaping out of the body from the head is very rare and can be achieved only by great yogis. And Bhishma was such a yogi. And his soul escaped from the head, which means it attained the feet of God. It attained feet of Krishna. After spending many more months with the Pandavas, because Yudhishthira was ever happy to have Krishna be with him, Krishna requested permission to Yudhishthira and said that his time to return to Dwarka has arrived. And Yudhishthira could not say no, and he acceded. But the Pandavas were deeply saddened at the thought of having to let Krishna go. So they wanted to send him off with a nice party. So the roads were wetted, garlands and flowers adorned the sides of the streets. All the buildings surrounding the main thoroughfare were cleaned, lamps were lit. It was a festive atmosphere. And then a golden chariot was prepared, and Yudhishthira himself became the charioteer. Krishna was seated on a throne, a golden throne in the middle on the chariot. Nakula and Sahadeva fanned him, and then Nakula and Sahadeva actually protected Krishna from behind. Arjuna and Bhima fanned him, and all the queens showered flowers at Krishna, and the chariot moved very slowly through the royal streets of Hastinapur. People rushed out to see the Lord of their hearts leave. Women watched from terraces and balconies and waved at him, and he waved back at them and laughed with the people, talking to some, inquiring about the well-being of some, and acting cheerfully. On reaching the outskirts of the city, Yudhishthira ordered a small contingent of his soldiers to follow Sri Krishna all the way back to Dwarka to ensure his safety. So Krishna was the Supreme Lord, and yet Yudhishthira followed the code of duty, the code of dharma, which is if a guest leaves, you have to protect the guest until the guest is safely back home. And that's why, despite Krishna being the Supreme Lord who could not be affected or killed by any enemy, he made a small contingent of his soldiers follow Krishna all the way to Dwarka. Krishna bid farewell to the Pandavas, and their eyes welled up with tears. The Bhagavatam, actually, Vyasa describes this part beautifully. Krishna crossed several cities, villages, deserts, forests, and other small hamlets, and people rushed to see him in all those places, and all those places that he traversed became purified because he was the Supreme Lord. Hastinapur is somewhere near Delhi, Indraprasth, and Dwaraka was off the coast. It was an island off the coast of Gujarat, and the distance was long. There was a desert to be covered and many forests and villages and cities. So the route was long, and people on the route were blessed by Krishna's presence amidst them. So finally, after moving through all these cities, Krishna reached the outskirts of Dwaraka. As soon as he saw the city from a distance, he became happy. And happily he blew his conch, the Panchajanya, announcing his arrival. Hearing this sound was a melody to the city's denizens. So the Krishna's people at Dwarka, all of them were his devotees. So they never could bear separation from their Lord. And so they were eagerly awaiting his return. And as soon as his conch shell, the sound of his conch shell was heard, King Ugrasena ordered an enormous welcome party to go out of the city and welcome the beloved of the people, Shri Krishna. King Ugrasena, along with Balrama and several of Krishna's sons like Pradyumna, Samba, etc., walked at the head of the welcoming party with dancers, drummers, singers, and common folk following them. And actually, if you read in the Bhagavatam, the first set of people to welcome Krishna back home were the prostitutes. So they were prostitutes by their profession, but their minds were with Krishna. So the Bhagavatam states that whatever your profession may be, if you are devoted to Krishna, your lives are saved. You are the most elevated of people. So the prostitutes were the first to welcome Krishna, and this is stated by Vyasa himself. So you can see in the past how truth was adhered to. So just because prostitutes were there, their presence was not spoken about. They are part of history. So Vyasa was open because openness was the characteristic of ancient India, which sadly is missing nowadays. And so the prostitutes welcomed him, and Krishna actually acknowledged their presence, and in fact he blessed all of them. So that was his greatness. So he did not see what the profession of the people who are coming to welcome him were, but what he saw was what is in their hearts. All Krishna sees is someone devoted to him. Only devotion matters to him, nothing else. Material opulence, or any other thing does not matter to him as much as devotion. And so the welcoming party involved all these people, of which the prostitutes proceeded the first, followed by drummers, singers, dancers, and the large welcoming party. And as soon as Balarama came near him, he embraced Sri Krishna and welcomed him into the city. At the sight of Krishna's lotus face, the people cried and said, "O Lord, these past few months in your absence has felt like aeons to us. We yearn for a vision of your lotus face, for your divine smile and your grace. Do always remain in our hearts and guide us." Sri Krishna, the Lord of the universe, acknowledged their prayers and freely moving amongst them entered his palace. In his palace, he first went and bowed down to his father Vasudeva, who embraced him. Then he fell down at the feet of all of his mothers. So Devaki was his real mother, and then all the other mothers in the palace were also very attached to Krishna. Every person present in Dwarka was extremely attached, and people older than him saw him as their own son. And so he actually fell down at the feet of all of his mothers, and they actually smelt his forehead and kissed him. After taking their leave, he went to his apartments. So Krishna had married 16,008 wives. We will see later how he acquired so many wives, but he had 16,008 wives, and he had constructed a complex like a palace for each house, for each wife, and he had actually divided himself into 16,008, and he entered each of his palaces, and his illusion was such that every wife thought that Krishna is her alone, that he is not being shared by anyone. So every wife actually thought that Krishna is henpecked, that he will only do what I demand him to do. They did not really know that he is the supreme person, that he actually controls all of them. And so he went to his palaces. His wives, who were seated, some were sitting, some were doing some service or other, they all dropped their work and rushed to welcome him back home. And he engaged cheerfully with them, talking to them about his exploits over the past few months. And thus ends this summary, which is actually based on chapter 7, midpoint of chapter 7 verses 13 up till chapter 11, and I have covered a little bit from chapter 12, Parikshit's birth, because that's where Krishna's form when he was protecting Parikshit is discussed. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.